All right, everybody, welcome to DCPC Live presents Scene Support, the podcast that highlights the unsung heroes of the music scene, the recording engineers, show promoters, record labels, graphics artists, photographers, zine writers, sound people, and more. I'm your host, Scott Pash, owner and operator of DCPC Live, a DIY record label documenting live hardcore punk, ska, and metal shows on short-run vinyl. I have 30 years experience playing drums in hardcore bands across the DC, Florida, and New York area, as well as booking and promoting shows, and I've had the privilege to work with a lot of talent, and I'm stoked to talk to them. Today's guest is Gerry LaFemina, president and founder of Savage Mountain Punk Arts in Frostburg, Maryland, a nonprofit dedicated to the preservation, promotion, and production of punk arts in northern Appalachia with a focus on western Maryland and the surrounding areas. One of the most notable ways they do this is their annual Savage Mountain Punk Arts Festival, which brings bands big and small from around the country to play in their small mountain town for a 3-day festival open to all ages. I first met Gerry during my ever so brief stint filling in on drums for Some Kind of Nightmare. As fun as the show was, the part that really sticks in my mind was the kindness and graciousness he and his partner Mercedes showed all of us, both at the show and at the home where they let us stay. So as much as I'm stoked to introduce him to listeners, I'm more excited just to catch up with someone who I've come to know, respect, and even love. Hey Gerry, how we doing, buddy?
Scott, that was beautiful, man. Beautiful. I love you. I love what you do. I'm excited to be here.
So, you are in Frostburg, Maryland, in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah, if you could draw a line between D.C. and Pittsburgh, almost dead center of that line is where I'm at.
Okay, because I got to say, in years of living in the D.C. area, you know where I never went was Frostburg, Maryland. Not once.
You know, I guess that a
Virginia,
lot, but you'll be surprised now how many people come to Frostburg and Cumberland from the D.C. area.
I actually would not be. Like, it was a very pleasant town, and the show we played was not one of your annual events, was it? It was just something you put together to Some Kind of Nightmare, or was it part of something that you do regularly?
No, it was a one-off for Some Kind of Nightmare. You know, like, we will do things for bands when they're coming through if it's possible for us to do it. And we've opened an art gallery recently. And we're doing visual art shows every other month that last 2 months, and we're always doing a show at the opening. So we have a show of Appalachian ink, basically tattoo artists from northern Appalachia who will be showing their work, and we have the Cheats playing with the Power. Of course, Todd Cheat from the Cheats is a longtime tattooist. Own Saints and Sinners Tattoos in Pittsburgh. So we try to do these shows that are connected to the visual arts in some way.
I love that. So I need you to explain to people in whatever short or long-winded way you prefer what exactly is Savage Mountain Punk Arts and what's its mission, how did it involve, inspiration, the whole fucking kit and caboodle. Give me the buffet of knowledge that you have to provide.
Well, here, you know, we'll start with the soup and salad course.
Okay.
You know, it started long before it was Savage Mountain Punk Arts, before we sort of created this nonprofit, which we did during COVID. I had a bar in town called Dante's that, once school was out, really struggled in the summers. And it was a place, a lot of jam bands and bluegrass bands played there, but they did a lot of rock and roll, and my punk bands had played there. And I sort of said to them, look, your stage is empty, and your bar is empty, much of July and August. What if I hosted a 3-day punk fest, or it was actually a 2-day punk fest then, with an all-ages show on Saturday afternoon? And they were like, well, we can't afford it. I said, I'll cover the cost of the band. And I basically, you know, figured if I went to Baltimore and I spent a weekend at shows in Baltimore, how much would it cost? Hotels, food, driving, blah, 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 blah. And I fashioned a budget from there. And it was mostly regional bands from Pittsburgh, from Richmond, from D.C., but we got the Nuclears from New York to come out, and we got the Moneys from Massachusetts were on tour.
All right.
And it paid for itself. Like, it didn't make money, but it didn't lose money. Like I sort of, and the bar was happy, so we did it again the following year. And I sort of said, well, if I made this much money and I was willing to spend that much money, then my budget could actually be this much money, right?
More.
Like,
Double even.
right,
Yeah.
it would be
Yeah.
more. And so then I was able to get like "Fuck You, Pay Me" from Cleveland, um, and and by year three, oh, I brought the Undead that year. And by year three, we were having Argyle Goolsby and the Crypt Keeper Five and the Pagan Babies, and by year four, we had the Queers.
There you go. Okay.
And at the Queers, we sort of hit capacity. Like we could no longer be in this small bar. So
Okay.
we started to sort of look around, and COVID happened and shut everything down. And we decided, well, wouldn't it be great if we did an outdoor event to support bands during COVID? And so that's when we did our
Sure.
first punk picnic because it was outside and we
Okay.
could do it. And then we did an outdoor Halloween show again outside, and we try to do these sort of little like porch shows at a bar again Saturday nights outside. But by then, we had a team of people who were helping me to do this. It's easy to say I chose to do this and blah blah blah, but by year three, there was a group of people who was invested in doing it. Monetarily, time wise, energy wise. And so we had a conversation about, well, what if we created a nonprofit? And I contacted the State Arts Council because, one of the great things about being a nonprofit is you can actually do things like apply for grants. I mean,
Sure. Yeah.
how many punk rock events do you know that are sponsored by a state arts council or a county arts council?
I think Punk Island is the only one that I know of off the top of my head.
Um, and the state arts council was like, we love this, and we created this board, and it included a graphic designer, it included an archive librarian because we wanted to archive all the stuff that had happened before I got to this area.
Sure.
And it included, some business people, some bookkeeping people. And when I toured in the '80s, Scott, and I'm sure you know this from playing shows all over the place, like it wasn't one person doing it. It was a team of people who was renting a hall, who had a PA, who made the flyers, who was running zines. And so the board is sort of that group. And as we've grown, like we realized we needed somebody with some legal skills. So we brought a paralegal on the board. We needed somebody with some fundraising skills. So we brought a grant writer on the board. Because when you do something like this, it's what you kind of said when we were talking in the stuff you cut before we went on. If you're going to do this, you want to do it sort of right. And so, now here we are. This is coming up in 2025. It'll be our 10th Savage Mountain Punk Fest.
That's amazing.
It's and I'll make the announcement here. We have the Dwarves headlining.
Fuck yeah, that's amazing.
We have an offer out to Super Chunk to be our Friday night headliner.
Fuck
And
yeah.
our Thursday night headliner, I actually just signed the contract today, is Ultra Bomb. And people are going to go, who the fuck's Ultra Bomb? Well, Ultra Bomb is Greg Norton of Husker Du and Derek of Social Distortion. And they are an amazing power trio that I would say if you don't know who they are, you should check them out.
Oh yeah. That is, dude, that is amazing, man. That is kind of the whole point of what this whole podcast is about, right? The scene support. You're in a band, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about you gathering people together to provide a space not only for the music you love, but you're even helping your own community. Like, I have to imagine the amount of money you're bringing into the shows are often in Cumberland or Frostburg.
Yeah.
It's got to help the local businesses. It has to help the local government because of the tax revenue. Like, you're a force for good.
Well, it is, but we're also a force for good in other ways. We've done benefit shows. Last year we did a Hunger Moon benefit. There was nearly $6,000 in student lunch debt in the public schools for kids who were not getting free lunch. We did a benefit to pay off the school lunch debt. Not only did we pay off the entire school lunch debt, we had enough money to support summer programs to feed kids when they're not in school. We've done benefits
amazing,
to support.
dude.
And it's a community thing. A whole bunch of people who would think I don't like punk rock come to these events and suddenly they go, "Oh, I actually like punk rock and more." Yes, it's a force for good. There is something to be said for seeing 200 people in, in combat boots and Chuck Taylors and Vans and black T-shirts walking around downtown Cumberland for a weekend. And they're there for only one reason, and that's to see punk rock.
That's awesome. That is just great. So,
and I will say this real quick, Scott, if I could say, it's also reciprocal. We have bars now that do Savage Mountain happy hours before the festival starts, before those shows. We have restaurants and stores that say, "Hey, if you're here for Savage Mountain Punk Fest, we'll give you a discount." Because they recognize the value of that audience.
Yeah, and that's great. And so when you do it, do you only use one venue for your festival, or is your festival spread over multiple venues? Because I've seen both versions. So like I go to the Fest in Gainesville fairly regularly, and that's like 15 bars. But like Croydon Fest, which is a ska festival in Bensalem, however you pronounce it, Pennsylvania, that's all at one venue, the Broken Goblet, the whole time. It's a big venue, but you're basically the same place all day long. So how does yours work?
It is one venue. We use a place called Mezzo's. The basement of this place is just an old school punk rock bar, but it's got a second floor restaurant where everybody eats. There's a lot of places to eat in town, but pretty much everybody eats there. And then the third floor is a venue. Last year we were doing flash tattoos up there, thanks to our collaboration with Tattoo Punks. It is a 2-block walk from the Ramada Inn, where I'd say 80% of the people who come to the festival stay. And they love it. They buy records between bands, walk their stuff back to their room, and then come back for the next band.
That is, and that is such the perfect idea. Like I often struggle with people calling something a fest when it's one day and it's 8 bands. I'm like, that's just a really long show. Like for me, it's like, and I get it. Like, not to like ever criticize what someone else does, because they're doing something and that's great that they're doing it. But like, you have to have a place where it allows people to come from out of town, where they can stay and they can get to the venue, and then they can do all this, and it becomes more than just going to a long show. It becomes, oh, I'm staying here this weekend. I'm staying at a hotel. I'm close to the venue. I'm checking out the local bars. I'm checking out the local tattoo shops. Like, it's not every town that can always do something like that. Perhaps. I don't know. Like, do you think Cumberland just happened to be the right place for what you needed?
There's sometimes it's just the nexus of right time, right place. The venue is a good venue. It's got its issues, but the owners really want stuff to happen. The city of Cumberland really wants stuff to happen, and the county, from the County Arts Council to the tourism, have been really supportive of what we do. It's kind of amazing how it worked out, and it is a place with hotels within walking distance, a lot of restaurants. And what people also find out, of course, is they come from DC or they come from Baltimore or they come from New York. Um, and suddenly everything is like 50% cheaper, which they also like. Um, this whole idea of festival, it's really interesting because we get a lot of bands. So we had DOA play last year. And Joey says to me, I thought this was going to be outside. And I was like, no. And he's like, this is just like a small club show. And I said, I always say that. They hear festival and they think it's going to be, 10,000 people and I'm selling water for $20 a bottle.
Yeah.
And I think of this as I'm sort of remaking what I experienced growing up in New York in the 80s, which was, CBGB's festival or something like that, where, they're just doing a long weekend of a lot of shows. And maybe it is just, 3 days of long shows, but it's 3 days in which we invite people into our community and we take really good care of them.
And I think that's, kind of the key to what I'm going to. I'm not quite doing as big as you, but I'm doing my first 2-day event. I'm doing monthly shows now at a place in Uptown Kingston called Snappers, starting in like 2 weeks. And in April, it's my 49th birthday and it's the 4th anniversary of the label. So I'm doing a 2-day event. And, I'm not calling it a fest. I'm going to call it the Rally in the Valley. But I'm bringing bands, which I already do anyway. Like my big focus is like most shows are often like 3 or 4 local bands. And I love the local scene here. But I also think it's better if you have 2 or 3 out of town bands. So I'm doing like sandwiches where I have an opening for that's out of town. I mean, a local opener, a local closer, and then 2 or 3 out of towners in the middle. And I'm doing these matinees. So I'm like, oh, I see what you do. And I'm like, I love where I'm doing it. And I love the venue. I was like, but there's no space for me to have vendors. There's no space for me to have food trucks. Like, I want that. I want to be able to provide a larger experience if possible. Do you provide the vendors and food trucks? Do you take sponsors? Because I know a lot of festivals do that.
We take sponsors, and because the venue has a restaurant in it, we don't need a food truck. But I should say this: in May we do our annual Savage Mountain Punk Picnic, and we have food vendors, we have food trucks and food vendors, and then we have arts vendors. Outdoors. This is a picnic area in a city park. And when we do our Punktoberfest, we always have room for X number of vendors and food in the back. It really is an event by event sort of thing. We really, for the festival, we try not to have a lot of vendors insofar as that we don't want to take away from the band selling merch, et cetera, et cetera. Like, if somebody goes upstairs and I have record vendors, how does that affect the possibility a band will make money off vendors? But we did do art shows on the 3rd floor. And like I said, last year we had tattoo punks doing flash tattoos, which was great. And I think we're definitely going to do that again. We've also had like Punk Rock Saves Lives there,
Yep.
and other organizations designed to help the community.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because I've vended at places like Camp Pennsylvania, and I'm kind of out there the entire day. I've never vended at Fest, but I know at Fest in Gainesville, the vending is only for the first 4 hours on that Friday. And after that, there's no more vending. So the vendors basically come in, they do their pre-setup right near where everyone's checking in and getting their wristbands, and then going to their hotels afterwards or whatnot. So it's kind of a, hey, come here, get your wristband. The first band doesn't play for a couple hours. Walk through here, buy a couple things, walk back to your room, drop it off, and then come see the first band. Which I think is a way to kind of mitigate your concern.
Yeah, that's an interesting way. I mean, I think the other thing, of course, is if you're a vendor, right? You talked about Camp Pennsylvania. If you're a vendor and you're on the 3rd floor, you're not seeing the bands, right? You're like, or you're running downstairs, running upstairs.
Yeah,
Um, you
yeah.
know,
I did it last year. I struggled to see the bands. There's two stages, and I would have to leave my area because even though I got two tickets with my vendor thing, I couldn't find anyone that was available to come down and would commit to working with me, even though I had a free ticket. Whatever, it happens. So I would go and see like one song or two from every stage. But then I put up this sign though, where like scan here if you buy something, and at least 3 or 4 times I got a thing going, oh, someone just bought a Fensick record. Very nice. There's an honesty to the people that come to these events where they're like, oh, I could steal this record, but the guy has a Venmo thing here, so I'm just gonna scan him and pay him his $20 and go.
I will say this. The punk rock community is such an honest and such a loving community when it comes to the honor system.
Yep.
I've never worried about having stuff stolen,
Nope.
at least not in this community.
Nope. I agree. Even on tour, I walked away from stuff. And my general thought, I think one time when I was in a band, someone stole a hat or a beanie, I think. And someone told me, like, oh, that kid just grabbed that. I was like, if they needed it that badly, like, whatever. It's fine. I'm not going to go make a scene and go all la policia on the person. I'm like, it is what it is. In general, most people don't do that, so I'm not stressing
Karma
it.
will bite their ass eventually.
Yeah. And they're still walking around advertising my band, so hey, go for it. Share it to everyone. Tell them you stole it. Tell them you bought it. I don't really care. But show everyone, yeah, this band was so great, I had to have their hat.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that it? Like, it's a backhanded compliment. Like,
Yeah.
I wanna celebrate your band by wearing it. But I couldn't afford it, and I wanted it.
Yeah. I wanted it really badly, though, so I just snuck it. I was like, all right, so be it. So, so what have been some of the highs and the lows of whether you're talking about the festival itself or running punk arts in general?
I you know Every year is a learning experience. And I think one of the lows, of course, is you're working with other people's venues. And you have to rely on a lot of people to make things happen. And sometimes the venues we work at, and this has been across the board, the owners aren't as invested in what we're doing as we are in what they're doing. So we often struggle with that. Last year there was a flood uh, during between Thursday night and Friday night of the festival. There had been one of the hurricanes had been stuck over Cumberland, and at around 12:30 on Friday afternoon, I got a phone call that there was about a quarter inch of water throughout the venue. It had basically, water will find the lowest point, and it did.
Sure.
And the ownership of the venue wasn't going to do anything about it. And so
Really?
there were the board with mops and squeegees and shop vacs doing the work. And I had a contact.
See,
The Dolly Rots were like, "Hey, we're coming to sound check," and I was like, "No, just hold off for another hour or so, please."
yeah. I don't want you to see what we're doing here. Hold on a second.
I think
Yeah, I mean, I
um,
get that. It's like a show in general. It's like, oh, I have to have someone working the door, but I need them to show up. I get a sound guy to make sure it sounds right. I get someone to do the flyers, but they've got to have the flyers in on time. Everyone's going to borrow
yeah,
one person's drum set, but the guy with the drum set gets in a car accident and he's not there, and no one brought a backup drum set. How are we going to solve this? Everyone
Yeah.
brought their breakables, but no one brought a drum throne.
We we're pretty good about Savage Mountain has its own backline. We backline everything as much as possible. But yeah, when you rely on other people can be unreliable. I think,
Yep.
and the other thing is, you constantly have to be accepting that there are things outside of your control. We're pretty clear that your set time is from X to Y.
Yep.
And if you go on 5 minutes late, your set time still ends at Y, not Y plus 5.
Yep.
And what we had to do is last year we put big clocks facing the stage.
Yep.
Because and little things, suddenly a headliner says to you, a month before the show, after our entire schedule is set, oh, we're bringing an opening act. Well, I have to figure out how to squeeze this band in. And,
Sure.
what's really amazing is that the other thing is that you learn who your friends are. So when this happened, I asked two local bands. I asked local bands to switch days. They both refused. So I started everything early, but messages didn't get sent to people. And you know what? It was bands who were like, there were bands who were from out of town who were like, Gerry, I see you're completely stressed out. You tell us what you need. You need us to play 20 minutes. That's all we'll play. We're just happy to be here.
Yeah.
This is not something we make money at. This is something we do because it's a labor of love. And I sometimes get really frustrated when people make it about them and not about the scene, not about the community. I wasn't trying to screw anybody. I was trying to deal with a problem that was dropped in my lap.
And you were trying to make it work, and nobody was willing to bend it all and say, yeah, we can make that happen.
Yes.
I get it. It reminds me, like, there's a show way back, 24 years ago. I was with the Overprivileged. We were playing a show in Delaware, and this young person had booked something like 15 bands that were supposed to play within like 8 hours or even less than that. And it quickly became obvious to me by the third or fourth band, when the math rock band played like for 45 minutes to an hour, that there was no way that every band was going to get to play. And so I decided to set up a second stage and have the next band have all their stuff set up, and then we would carry the PA over and move it. It was fairly transportable. And all of a sudden, I had nothing to do with the show. I didn't set up the show. I was just one of the bands playing it. I pushed my band to last so that nobody thought I was trying to screw everyone. I cut everyone to like a 15-minute set and told them they had to be ready to go as soon as the other band was done, carry the PA over and go. And I think my band went on and played 2 songs before the lights. I mean, it was a hard stop. It was at this community center. Like, they were not allowed to go past like 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
Like, it had to be done. Like, boom, lights out. And I'm like, all right. And there were people that were angry with me. I was like, I'm just trying to make sure everyone here gets to play a little bit. If you want to take care of it, that's fine. I'm not even in charge of this show, but the kid in charge just kind of abdicated and is outside hanging with her friends. They booked a lot of bands and it's okay. It's, and I'm like, there's right. No way this can happen.
I look, you and I both have been around for a long time, and you've seen how things don't work.
Yep.
I of course have horror stories. In fact, do you ever want to do another podcast on, gig horror stories? There are plenty. I have horror stories of what I've seen. I mean, my basic thing is this: everybody gets paid. I don't pay. Yep. I don't stiff bands. I don't ever say, "Oh, you're local, you don't have to get paid," blah 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 blah. Unless it's a benefit and it's understood, hey, you're not getting paid for this. We're trying to do a charitable thing, and that is the money isn't going to the organization at all. It's going to, our Toys for Tots show that we do every year. The bands often play for free. The idea being that we're collecting money and toys for the Toys for Tots. But pretty much, you play the
I've
festival.
definitely noticed that you get paid.
Yeah, everybody gets paid. There's a minimum. There's a minimum you get paid. It's not, and there's a big, sort of heavy metal, sort of hard rock festival in this town that happens, and they don't pay local bands at all. And I just find that reprehensible. Band plays, you get paid because they're locals and they should be excited to play with, these headliners, which is great. But, Savage Mountain, we want to, one of our missions is to foster the production of new work, new bands, etc. And you do that by paying people, by treating them like what they do matters.
And I agree with that. And I think I probably over the years been prone to like, okay, I did a show for a touring band and sometimes it just doesn't go well. It's whatever night it is, and maybe I only have $50 at the door and I'm laying out extra money to the touring band and I don't have much then to give to the locals. Most of the time the locals would say, if I'm just giving them $20, you just give it to the touring band. Right. But I get that. You want to treat the locals with respect. And I think in my younger days, I've certainly probably made that mistake of not doing so because I would be happy to pay without getting paid. But that's not me giving respect to myself per se, right? So I've learned over the years, what you're saying is absolutely correct. Like everybody deserves to get paid. You're putting on the show, then you need to take that in mind.
Right. And with the festival, of course, that is especially important. Ditto the punk rock picnic. The punk rock picnic, we don't have a headliner. We pick the names out of a hat. It's all bands that have never played for us before.
Love that.
And every band gets paid $100 and a bunch of beer tickets. And but the two winners get to play the festival.
There you go.
And so,
winners. So is there like a battle of the bands competition at the picnic?
It's a battle of the bands. Yeah, it's a battle of the bands. It's a way of, and what happens is people tell their friends, you got to come to this day-long thing. It's going to be outdoors. We're going to be, it's going to be rock and roll and food and vendors, and it's an hour and a half away, and we want you to come, and people come.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a good time had by all right there. That's great.
That's right. But yeah, when it comes to the organization, so this is, and it comes to these major shows, everybody gets paid. Smaller shows, they may not get paid as much, but our mission is to make sure people get paid.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense, and as they should be. And I'm going to be working with a band called World Sucks, and I've already helped them for booking their tours plenty of times. And they're like, Scott, you help us so much that we think you should come on as our de facto management. We should actually pay you for what you do. And I was like, oh, I don't mind doing it. It's like helping. It's like, no, you are valued and you should get paid for it. And I was like, well, that's fine. We'll do it. It's like, but I'm also going to ask people to pay you. It's like, what do you mean? I was like, you're past the point of touring and just taking whatever crumbs people will give you. You need to get paid, especially since you tend to donate a percentage of every show to a local charity. Like their last tour they donated a percentage to a reproductive rights center every place they played on tour. I was
That's
like,
great.
You're out there, you're on road, you're giving some money away. You should be able to say, hey, we need at least $150. That way you can donate a decent amount of money and also put gas in your car. Like that's not a big ask. So
I agree.
Yeah. Especially in a day where gas is no longer 99 cents a gallon. like it was 20 years ago.
Was that only 20 years ago? I think it was even longer than that.
I mean, I remember touring in 99, 2001, 2002, and it was like 99 cents at one point. I was like, oh, this is easy to do. Not a problem. And
well, you know what's amazing is, of course, I started going to punk shows, and shows were $5. You know, like the CBGB matinee was $5. People still expect punk shows to be $5, and I'm like, what? Inflation hasn't hit punk rock? I mean, it's amazing. Last year, last year at the festival, we had DOA, the Dolly Rots, Scream, 17 other bands, including like Jigsaw Youth from Brooklyn, who are great, and
I just hung out with one of them the other day.
And tickets for the 3 days was $100.
Yeah.
People complain it's too much money. I'm like, do you know how much?
It's a 3-day festival.
It's a 3-day festival. It's like DOA has a set price. Scream had a set. It's like, I can only have, it's a 250 person venue tops.
Yep.
Do the math, people.
The show I'm doing, those annual shows on Sundays, the bar wants me to keep it at $5, and I'm doing it for this first one, and we'll see how many it goes. I'm like, I'm bringing bands from out of town, and they have $200 or $300 guarantees, right, which is not at all inappropriate to ask.
Right.
But if I'm charging $5 and I get 100 people in, then I have $500, and I have to pay the sound guy, I got to pay the graphics person that made the thing, I have to pay the door guy who worked the door, and then I got to pay the 2 or 3 touring bands. Well, I should be able to break relatively even, and maybe even lose a little bit of money, like you had talked about earlier. But if I just charge $7, that could ameliorate that whole process of me losing money.
Yes.
That extra $2 or $3 could mean, like, take that burden of me going, okay, how much out-of-pocket money I'm going to be out this show. I mean, I'm going to love every moment of it.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer right now in the sort of regular daily show, the $10 show. And in part because I don't want to have to deal with making change.
And change seems to be the number one issue. It's like $5, and people think $10 is too much, and $7 and $8 causes too much trouble.
Right.
And I'm like,
but I sort of feel like if you have 5 bands at $10, that's $2 a band.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
I agree.
And the other thing is the difference in price is 1 PBR.
Yes, exactly. And this is one of those great venues where, you can get an IPA for $4. And so they're not overcharging for their drinks at all. So you'll have plenty of money to drink. You can get, I forget what they call it. They have a combo, a PBR and a shot of tequila. And it's like $3.
Wow.
So you can get your game on just fine. So.
Hey, by the way, I meant to tell you this because you were talking about bands you work with, etc. Soji is coming to the festival this year.
Oh, that is so rad. You are so going to love seeing them. They are amazing live. Great people, too. Great people. So, Gary, I have known for a very, very long time and love that guy to death. Back when he was in Common Enemy, even before that, when he was just coming to the shows and before he became their new singer. Love that kid. By kid, I mean, someone who's probably in his mid-30s now.
Kids to us, buddy. Kids to us.
Yeah, right? It's like, oh, I got to stop calling people kids.
Wow.
And I appreciate you do everything all ages. I think that is something I also struggle with. It's not a lot of venues in my current area. And growing up in DC, everything was tended to be all ages. It's hard to find the venue that will consistently do punk rock shows and do all ages ones.
Well, what we have here is we have a law that says if you are a restaurant, you can have an all ages show.
Oh.
As long as you serve food, your venue can be all ages. And since Mezzo's has a restaurant, we can have an all ages show. When we did the festival at Dante's, they did not serve food, so we had to do an all ages matinee.
Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
and then anything in which we run the show itself, like when we do the picnic or we do a hall show in which we're selling the beer through the nonprofit, like we can get a 1-day liquor license as a nonprofit. We can make it an all ages event because the nonprofit is taking the responsibility.
Okay, fascinating. Yeah, there's one great bar, the Unicorn Bar. I'm doing a show with Big D and the Kids Table there, and they're open to doing all ages shows. So very, very, the owner's super friendly, super nice. They're not exactly like lovers of punk rock, but they really enjoy DIY music. They enjoy ska and Riot Grrrl. So if it's the right show, they'll do it. But also that's not what they were open to do.
Right.
It's like there's the Blackbird Info Shop. It's a great anarcho coffee shop. They'll do a show here and there, but once again, that's not their mission.
Right.
They'd say, yeah, okay, we'll help a band here and there, but it's gotta like fit our brand, our ideology, our world that we're in, which I totally respect and understand. So, have you thought about opening your own venue then? Or finding your own permanent? Yeah, I know, right? Like, can you add to your things that you do?
We now have an executive director who works part-time. And, right, like for a long time, this was just a volunteer-based organization. And this year coming up, we will have 2 student interns working with us from the university.
So rad.
Yeah, one to help with the art gallery and a sort of arts programming part of it, and one as our social media marketer. And it's great. Like, and working with the students is another part of that component of being educational in some way, shape, or form. We have talked to places about having a multimedia art space. We talked to one person who had the old Eagles building. It had so much damage, and it just struck us that he was never going to actually do the work, but it would have been perfect. Sure. Then we talked to another place, approached us, but again, it was one of those things where a lot of talk, not a lot of follow through. Ultimately, we would love to have a bigger space, and we would love to have a space of our own. But with that comes more responsibility. And when you're talking about an all volunteer board, I mean, Scott, you know this, but other people don't. I mean, I have a full-time job.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
I have a full-time job as a professor. I have a full-time writing life. I'm the author of 22 books, and I teach and I travel as a writer. And then, of course, I have the Downstrokes, which is another full-time job, running a band.
And a great punk band.
Thank you. And then, of course, Savage Mountain. And yes, a lot of people, the work is spread out among a lot of people. But I'm the one, co-writing the grants. I'm the one keeping the budget with the treasurer. I'm the one overseeing things. I'm the one who signs every band contract. The idea of running a venue sounds really fucking exhausting. And I don't know if we would use it enough.
Oh, that's what it comes down to. Like, you would have to use it on a super regular basis, right, or find other uses.
Exactly.
And then you'd have to worry about insurance, property tax, whatever the mortgage, rent, etc. is.
Right.
And then it's just, doing, like, I thought about it off and on. I'm like, I mean, I don't even know if I would have the time. I mean, it'd have to be something I do full time. And if I do it full time, and, these things tend to operate at night, I'm like, I still have 2 teenage kids I actually like to see. Maybe
they
4 or 5
like
years when they're
to
away at college.
Is the question.
I mean, there's a marginal amount, right? It's like, but that's my only chance I get to possibly see them. Usually it's driving them somewhere. Like, oh, Dad can drive me here, Dad can drive me there, and they'll talk a lot, and, yada, yada. But yeah, it's like, I don't want to be absent every night. I'm already gone several nights a week. When I have band practice, when I get another band going again, going to at least one or two shows every week, usually either to go check out a show or to pass out flyers for one of my shows. I still do that. So it's like, oh, if I had a venue, I'd have to be there like all the time.
Yeah.
Like all the time. I'm not sure I can dedicate that much of my life to something. So
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to I'm at sort of maximum capacity now.
yeah,
Would I like to find, if somebody said, "Look, I have this venue, and I want Savage Mountain to host a significant portion, like Savage Mountain is going to be kind of a silent partner in this. We're going to book all your stuff there, blah, blah, blah. You'll have cream of the crop, blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
But it's not your responsibility. I'd love it. But that requires somebody to actually be like, hey, I love what you're doing, and I want to be a part of it.
No, I agree. I mean, I think it definitely comes down to that. It's like, I'd rather find a venue that I can work closely with and do the stuff when I have the time to do it. Like, even making this commitment to do a once a month show, to me, like, for a man who's busy as I am, that's a significant commitment.
Yeah.
And that I have to find people to be supportive every month that are going to actually stick around. I mean, I haven't even done my first one yet, right? So this whole, like, I'm already booking out into May, and I'm like, oh, what if this whole thing's like a disaster? But I'm booking it, doing things, hiring things. I'm like, I'm just counting on it being great. So,
well, I think one of the things you have to say is that, you can't base anything on the results of the first one, right? Like we had to build
everything has
festival.
to build and grow.
Right. So.
And I recognize that, right? Like I've been doing stuff long enough to know that it's like you don't break up your band after your first show, right? I mean, maybe you do. So it takes time for something to grow and people to like recognize that this is a thing that's happening, and
exactly
build interest into it, which you've done an amazing job of, and your lineup impresses me consistently, both with the smaller acts that you give a chance. And the larger acts you managed to get in there, I was like, you were doing something truly impressive to me.
Thank you. We're really excited. I never thought I would be booking DOA or the Dwarves. I never thought I would actually make it to 10 years of doing it. But it's been a phenomenal ride, and it's a phenomenal ride because people support it. Like, we have people who come every year, and they call themselves lifers. And they come from,
that is awesome.
Tom Trauma comes from Michigan every year. People drive hundreds of miles every year to come for 3 days, and they can't wait. And it really is like a big family reunion, and I love it. And if I did,
and it's
yeah.
Okay. So it's September, right? That's when it happens. August. Okay, and it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yes, August 7th, 8th, 9th, 2025 this year.
All right, I could actually make that. My school doesn't start until like a week or two after that, perhaps.
There you go.
So. Unless I get a job. It's always possible I have a real job.
Real jobs are overrated, Scott.
Real jobs are overrated. But I would definitely love to come out to one. And I still, to this day, I still want to record. I'm doing the Camp Pennsylvania live compilation coming out next month. And I recorded an entire 3 days worth of bands at Florida Underground Fest in Florida, and I actually learned how to use Reaper and bring my laptop, and I can connect to a board and do the recording. So
we actually have
that idea.
We actually have recordings of every band, multi-track recordings for every band that have just been mixed. I just listened to the downstrokes. I got the mixes maybe Friday. I just listened to
Okay.
the downstroke set. My guitar sounds like a buzzsaw the entire time. Um,
That's could be great.
so who knows? I might be talking to you about doing a DCPC live of the 2024 festival.
I would be all in it. If you need a sponsor for next festival too, let me know.
You're consider yourself in.
Excellent. Send me the invoice.
Working on it now.
All right.
And I'll
I
say
will
this.
not say no to
I'll
your
say
money.
this. There was a documentary film made about our festival, a short form
That's so
documentary,
rad.
20 minutes long. It won the Best of Show at the Mountain Maryland Film Festival and
Fuck yeah.
Viewers' Choice Award. It has been entered into Sundance and Slam Dance and the LA Punk Film
Oh yeah.
Festival and South by Southwest and the Lower East Side Film Festival, among
You
others.
are
It's an exciting time. So
good for you, my man. I am. It's an honor to work with someone like you, to know that you're out there doing this sort of stuff.
it,
It's amazing, dude.
brother, I love you. I love what you do with DCPC Live. Love that Luxury Teeth LP.
Excellent. I'm glad you're digging it.
And love your Some Kind of Nightmare post mortem.
Thank you. Yeah, I was sad.
Me too, as you know.
Yep.
But mostly, I love your energy and enthusiasm, right? I mean, like, that's why we do it. We do it because other people care too.
Yeah. It's what I have to do.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like not what I want to do. It's who I am.
Yeah.
It's what I want to do until I can't do anything anymore.
I get it.
Yep. It's like my 16-year-old will be like, oh, what show are you going to tonight? Because she just assumes I'm going to, because that's what I do. I
Right.
go out and I engage with my community, and that's my community, the
Yeah.
music world. So, and you are part of that community. So, speaking of which, let me know if you guys can. I don't know if you want to come up on a Sunday. That can be hard, I know, because you have work on Mondays. But if you want to come up on a Sunday, we can look for a Sunday coming up in like where there's a Monday federal holiday or something like that.
Yeah.
And
It's in Kingston, New York.
yes, I don't know how far away that is per se. I'm guessing at least 5 hours.
Yeah, we'd love to. We'd love to. You know, obviously, like Memorial Day doesn't work and stuff like that,
Yeah,
but we have some we have some flexibility. It's 6 hours
it's
from
a
Frostburg.
matinee. It's
It's a
a matinee. So
matinee.
ostensibly the show will be over at 9, and you could be home by like 4 in the morning.
Yeah, which wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah.
I mean, the nice thing is we could find a place along the way too.
Yes.
So,
All right. Well, I don't want to take up any more of your time, Gerry. I mean, I cannot wait to see more of you and see more of what you're doing, and I am going to do everything in my power to make it to this festival. I'm going to support you. I'm going to support Soji and all those other great bands you have going on. Give my love to Mercedes.
give
Thank
my
you, everyone else. Okay.
give my love to the fam, of course.
Absolutely.
And I have so much respect and love for you, Scott. When we picked you up from the airport that day, I just knew you were my people,
Yeah.
and all these years later, I still feel that way. I would love to have DCPC Live as a sponsor of the festival, of course. But more importantly, I'd love to have you come out and hang out. That would just be a riot.
Absolutely. Like, that's what I just meant. Like, I meant in the introduction that just hanging out and talking with you, it's been a treat. It's when,
Me
when I
too,
told
brother.
my wife I was talking with you, she's like, "You're talking to Gerry?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "We love Gerry." She's never even met you, but like, my love for you is so broad that she loves you.
The feeling is mutual. Mercedes is like, do you feel up to a Zoom for an hour after yesterday? I'm like, yeah, I feel great. Talking to
You
Scott's
feel great.
easy. So
Thank
listen,
you.
brother, I love you. Have a happy new year.
You too, my man. And thank you everyone else for checking out. And everyone have a great fucking New Year and great day.